Alright, what's going on everybody? Echo here, and I wanted to kind of do something a little bit different today. We just got our Savage clear of another Sil'dihn Subterrane finally, the new Criterion dungeon introduced in patch 6.25. And I kind of wanted to do a little something different. I wanted to kind of walk through the Savage version of this dungeon, and only the Savage version, and kind of give my thoughts and my tips and my tricks to kind of help people that might be interested in doing that content, even though there's not really much of a reward for it right now. Please fix that, Square Enix. But it is fun to do the Savage version. It is pretty tough as nails to tank and heal. DPS, nothing really changes too much for you except that all the telegraphs are like instant. So yeah, that's more of a look at the Savage version of this fight. I'm not going to be going over like general strategies or anything that's going to like clear normal. It'll just kind of be like a quick gloss over. This guide kind of like assumes that you're already familiar with the normal version of the fights and how to handle it. I'd claim no ownership or like originality on creating the strategy or strategies for specifically Sil'dih. For the JP Rain Dead strat, we used to clear Shadowcaster Zealous at the end. I'll go ahead and link the videos and give the appropriate credits where those are due to Mr. Happy and everybody else that came up and made the actual strategies before I did, and before we applied it to our Savage. So, let's go ahead and get started. First things first, you need to know about Savage is that it completely takes away the resurrections that the normal mode gives you. The variant raise is gone, so if anybody in your party of 4 dies or anything like that, you're basically without them for the rest of your dungeon, and you might as well just wall it at that point, unless you're like on the last stretch as Shadowcaster. You're probably not going to meet any of the DPS checks for the bosses or the trash packs in the dungeon. So if you lose any members of your party, you might as well just find the quickest way to die, reset, and get ready to start again. The health pool totals on the bosses themselves have been increased on the Savage version, so that's something to be aware of. You need to do a little bit more DPS, and you're probably going to see mechanics that you were skipping on the normal version. Specifically on Shadowcaster, you're going to probably have to do Infern Brand 5, and Sil'dih, you're apparently going to have to deal with the 4 blue tether mechanic. Trying to think of what else. And the damage output for the bosses is pretty much the same as they are in the normal version of the Criterion. You just have to kind of like adapt your cooldowns because you have to come straight from the trash into the boss. You can't really like kill yourself and reset and try again because all the trash will respawn. Oh, that's another thing for Savage. The trash, if you die or wipe at any point, you have to restart from the start. Back to the beginning, all the trash is respawn, full health, ready to go. Also said along the lines of that thinking, there's a 24-minute timer from the time you pull the first plant outside of this door whenever you start your run, or if you want to pull a Groot, as we like to call him, you'll start the timer there. So the instant that you establish any kind of aggro or action against the first monster, whichever one you choose to go for first, you will start that 24-minute timer. And then the damage on pretty much all of the trash packs has been basically supercharged. Like, it's rough. I'll go over some of the strategies and things that we did to kind of alleviate some of those things on the trash packs. Mostly your time on the Savage version of this dungeon is going to be spent reprogging the trash and learning how to like handle the trash with the new souped up damage values and the new way that their telegraphs, well, they're non-existent telegraphs, I guess I should say. So yeah, let me go ahead and pull up the video. Well, the video is already pulled up, and go ahead and get started. So for the first set, I recommend coming out and pulling the plant monster, the Belladonna, I think it is, and dragging it to the door. Be careful with this, as you can see, Groot. Alright, as you can see, Groot is standing around the back there, kind of just chilling and doing his thing. So I would drag her kind of where you see me right now, just like a little bit out of the door. But if you're farther than the pillar that's behind her, that corner, you're probably going to pull a Groot, and you're probably going to wipe the head pull her here. I recommend using potion openers on her. Start the potion timer rolling, so get as much damage as you want out. You see she does the donut, same thing that she does in the normal version of the dungeon, and then go back. She does the tank buster here. You see I bow light it, super bow light it. Whenever we first started attempting to prog the trash, the only way that I was living was if I popped Nebula, Rampart, and Corundum. Basically blew like all my CDs to live this one tank buster, and it kind of like, well, it's definitely not worth it. You're not going to have any of those available when you need them on the next sets of trash, and you're definitely going to need them on the next sets of trash. So let's go ahead and start the cooldown on your tank buster, or your tank immunity right here. Immune the tank buster, and it has the bonus, the added bonus if you do it late into the cast bar, of basically soaking up all of the follow-up auto attacks that she's going to do your tanks too. Doing it towards the 75% portion of her cast bar completing, your 10 seconds will cover the 3 autos that follow the tank buster, and basically you're safe until she does her gaze. So go ahead and take a look. You kill her before it happens, but you can see I still have about 5 seconds on my bow light left. So yeah, recommend pulling her first. Recommend using your tank buster on her, and go ahead and get cooldown ready. Any situations really that we found where Bolide would save the run are pretty much run enders in Savage, because using your immunity really is only useful in the normal version for like somebody dies and you have to like choose a mechanic or something. Like Shadowcaster is a really common portion with the jumps. We'll cover that later, but I highly recommend just using the take immunities on the trash, starting with the Belladonna. It lines everything up nicely for post-Silky trash as well, so we'll cover that again a little bit later. So after that's done, I recommend pulling Groot next, getting him out of the way since he's just patrolling and doing his little Groot things. Nothing really changes much on Groot. I recommend using pretty much none of your cooldowns other than your 25-second whenever you pull him, just so that your healer doesn't like shit bricks whenever Groot walks over and starts auto-attacking you. Be careful when you do initially pull him. He does have some weird jank with his auto attacks. He will slap you twice back-to-back consecutively. It's really scary when it happens. It will completely deplete your tank's health pool if you're not careful and you're not topped up before pulling Groot. So respect Groot. He's definitely not your friend, but I wouldn't use any of your defensive cooldowns or any of your big mitigations on him. However, you're about to get to the hardest part, and I think probably the hardest trash in here, at least from my perspective. You're gonna get to the Aqueduct Nimbara. This is a very random trash pack. It's very hard to like concisely do this or consistently do this trash pack, I would say. Very frequently, this is the trash pack that would like make or break a run for us. If you're able to get lucky with the honeyed attacks that he does, and they don't line up with weird timings with the 2 little small guys, then you'll have a really good time. You'll probably make it to post-Silky, but he's very fickle, mostly because the telegraphs from the 2 small guys, the Aqueduct Saprias next to him, they are very consistent with their timing, so sometimes you will pull the Unumbara, the big guy, and you'll have absolutely no telegraphs from the 2 small guys until after he does his Onion thing, and you get really lucky, and you'll probably have a good run if that happens. Or you'll get really unlucky, and they will do their telegraphs while he's casting his honeyed technique. If that happens, it's really random. They don't bait on the tank specifically, they bait on random party members, so it's really a dice roll on if you have a safe spot to stand in, if there's room for you to maneuver with all the stuff going on, and his untelegraphed cleave. So this is a very dangerous trash pack. I recommend not using any of your cooldowns on Groot, because he, outside of his autos, which your healer will eventually like get the rhythm of, I recommend just keeping yourself up with your 1-2-3 rotation. Don't burst him down. Don't use your 1-minute or 2-minute burst windows on Groot. Save them for those trash packs, because this trash pack will make or break your run. So keep going with this. I pre-pull, I pop Nebula, a big 2-minute cooldown, and I pop Arm's Length. Arm's Length will not work on the Unumbara, but it will work on the small guys, so you might as well just go go ahead and get it out of the way and start the slows on those two guys. It does help a little bit, I guess. Pre-pull, these guys, the Anumbara himself, hurts. Does a lot of damage with its melee, and then you got couple it with the smaller guys. The smaller guys don't hurt as much, but they still, all three of them hitting your tank at the same time is a little rough. So I recommend your 2-minute CDs here. Rolling. The only way that we found that we like to handle this consistently is to point him at the back wall, and then have basically the rest of the party stack on the back, his rear flank, where the two small guys are. And then kind of just hope and pray that the telegraphs from the small guys give you a little bit of breathing room. Again, it's a little rough. This is very inconsistent. It's the run maker, I think, for once you for your prog on this. Go ahead and go on that. Okay, so you see that I'm starting my 2-minute No Mercy, or my 1-minute No Mercy window. I recommend not AoEing the pack down. I know that like Tendency would tell you that you want to use all your big cleaves, your Fated Circle for your Gunbreakers out there, all your big AoE rotations to try and burn all three of them down. But I recommend your tank using like a little bit of an their AoE rotation, but using all their single target combo finishers. You'll see that I come in, I double down, I get Battle Shock out, and that gives me enough aggro on the two small guys. And then I do not use Fated Circle. I start Gnashing Fang combos solely on the Anumbara. I start using my Burst Strikes on the Anumbara instead of Fated Circle. You really want to burn him down faster. The telegraphs from the small guys haven't changed as much. They're still well in advance of the actual move coming out. And the auto attacks from them are very like minuscule once you get the Anumbara down, so it really behooves you to use your single target rotation. Just have your tank establish aggro on the two small guys to where they're only looking at him, and then have all your DPS and your healer just blow up this Anumbara. Well, your healer's probably not going to be blowing him up. Your healer's probably going to be wetting bricks and keeping the tank up, because there's a lot of damage going out. That's why I recommend using Nothing Hungry. I recommend rolling your CDs, so as soon as Nebula is done and after the Honey attack, you're going to see me pop Rampart and Camouflage. And I'm going to also cover myself around him a little bit. It's basically going to exhaust every cooldown I have necessary, but you don't really need them for the next trash set. So I highly recommend just rotating them once your Nebula or your big 2-minute cooldown falls off of your tank. Just have him rotate Rampart and his small 25-second cooldowns and cover himself with that. Hopefully your DPS is good enough that should be enough that all you need, but if your DPS is really slow, then you're going to have a rough time. You're probably going to see multiple Honey attacks, and you're going to be rolling the RNG that the Honey attacks and the telegraphs and the small labs are going to eventually line up to give you like non-existent safe zone. So I highly recommend openers on this guy, single target, get him out of the way. Once he's out of the way, the fight's much more manageable. So, keep going. You see me just keep bursting him down. There's this Honey attack, I go back and stand in front of him. See me doing my AoE rotation to keep aggro, but I just use a Burst Strike. I don't Fated Circle in here until everything falls down. And then, now that he's out of the way, you see it's much more manageable. That Telegraph is much easier to dodge because it's out well in advance of the attack. You see there's very little damage going on your tank, so this is kind of a breather for your healer and your tank once the big guy goes down. So, I'm going to keep going. Right here, optional. And you're trying to beat that 24-minute timer. Okay, so this trash set, you're going to go into it, if your tank follows my advice, if you're using my advice, you're going to go in with no tank immunity cooldown, and your 2-minute and Rampart are going to be on CD. But it's alright. I recommend pre-pulling your 25 just to keep them from spiking you really low whenever you first establish aggro. And then I recommend doing the same thing that you did with the Anumbara to the Dryad here. I recommend your tank using just enough AoE to get aggro, and then here you see me use my 2-minute No Mercy window, and basically do the same thing. I single target, I Gnashing Fang solely on the Dryad instead of Fated Circle. I use Burst Strikes, trying to get him out of the way. It's the same basic concept, except there's less variance in RNG with this because the small circles are much easier to reposition and dodge, and the only thing that you really have to worry about from the boss himself is the Arboreal Storm, the untelegraphed big AoE, and it's fairly easy to get out of the way of that. So this pack is very consistent once you get past the Unumbara. The Unumbara is the inconsistent one out of the first 3 packs before Silky. So, recommend just covering yourself with your 25-second CDs, and I recommend using your 2-minute burst on Dryad if you're lined up to where your DPS or TPS and your tank are bursting right here. So, recommend. It does get a little bit spicy. This is very rough, but it is doable. So you see, start my 2-minute, getting everything into the single target, and you see these telegraphs are much easier to dodge. Acorn Bomb, we don't even see an Arboreal Storm because we single target down the Dryad fast enough. And then after he's gone, it's pretty much the same thing as one of the Unumbara dies, just a breather for your tank and your DPS and your healer to kind of like get their cooldown set, get yourselves in order for Silky. Very little tank damage going out, very little healing required. Enough that you can cover it with a 25-second CD. After that, Silky, like I mentioned before, is pretty much unchanged in terms of like damage and mechanics. Nothing's changed on Savage. The only thing that you'll notice is that the health pool is a little larger, so you're probably going to see 4 puff, the 4 blue puff mechanic at the end of the fight, and the subsequent dashes. So this is pretty much standard fare for Silky. Another thing I do recommend if you're doing Savage, I recommend coordinating your burst, figuring out where your burst lies for your group and your DPS, and making sure you're all on the same page, and basically using potions on cooldown whenever they line up with your 2-minute burst windows. So you see pretty much everything lining up as usual. I'm not going to cover, like I said before, I'm not going to cover the strategy for Silky, like Upham or anything like that. I'll link it in the video description if you guys want to take a look, but this is just purely a look at Savage, so I'm going to assume that you're already kind of familiar with this fight and know how to handle it. Pretty much, you can see nothing really changes with Silky. Your tank should be mostly able to keep themselves covered through a lot of the autos and stuff with their 25-minute cooldown, and sprinkle in Rampart whenever it is applicable. Or if you want to give your healer a little bit of breathing room. The Tank Buster, I recommend using your 2-minute Tank Buster on the drop like he does right there. Here you see us getting into our 2-minute window. This is where our 2-minute window will align for our group. This is also the potion window. Again, I recommend using your potions on cooldown basically, and bringing in big stacks with you. Total Wash. So, the way we approach Total Wash, you see we have a Scholar in our group. Basically, we set ourselves up to where he kitchen sinks this first Total Wash to where he doesn't have to deal with the bleed at all. And the tank helps out with that. If you have a warrior, it's really nice too, because Shake It Off is much better for helping to avoid the bleed. You give them like additional buffer for their shields, so that the bleed is much less likely to happen. Our summoner in this group was using his personal carbuncle shield to shield himself and kind of take away the chance of the bleed too. But otherwise, this Total Wash really isn't that much of a big problem, I would say. Pretty much handle it the same way. I recommend having your tank's raid-wide mitigation cooldown or reprisal, whichever one you want to use, coordinate amongst yourselves. I recommend having that one on there. I recommend having one of your DPS cooldowns. You see we have Addle. On this Total Wash. And then I believe we have, yeah, we do have Expedient and we have Soil, so have 4 total mitigations. It is a little spicy, the dot on Savage. It doesn't really, I guess I think it does, the values are a little bit higher for the bosses on some of their moves, as I corrected from what I said earlier, but they're not wildly different like the ads are. So if you pretty much continue doing what you were doing before, you're on normal, you'll probably be fine on the Savage variation of this. So, keep going, see the only have 1 bleed because we kitchen sinked it on our Dragoon. Get blue tail. Again, at this point I would highly recommend that you learn Upham. I'll put it up in the guide for a little bit if you want to, for a second, if you want to take a look at it, pause the stream. Credit to Alyssa and Ray. I apologize if I butchered your name on Midgard's Armor for coming up with the strat. I highly recommend using these variations of the mechanics, or this first buff tether mechanic. It helps you to meet the DPS check, helps you meet enrage, and allows you a little bit of breathing room with light damage downs and stuff like that if you're just doing uptime strats for this fight. So again, I'll link the I'll link this in my video description and give credit to Alyssa and Ray where it's due. Take this down and looking. So do Upham. Do Upham. It was the Cardinal version, so if you have blue tail, never mind. I'm not going to sit here and explain the strats, because again, I'm assuming that you have some kind of basic understanding of the fight for looking at the Sav version. So handle the follow-on tail mechanic the same way. You see it does get a little painful, but you don't really need to use too many external mitts on it. I usually just let this one fall on Kusani. Pretty much covered the entire thing while we did this. So he has a little bit more uptime here. So he's gonna, he just did the dash, so your healer and your healer probably kitchen sinked if you took my advice earlier. So this total wash coming after the dash is actually a little spicy. It's very rough. Again, Tank should be using one of their raid-wide mitigations on this, or whichever one they didn't use on the first. It will be up and available now, so I recommend using it here. And I also recommend saving your 25-second cooldown for your DPS and your healer and using it to buffer and cover them. Your tank is probably going to be fine throughout this entire process if you're geared and paying attention to what they're doing. The DPS are much less so, and they have much less tools for keeping themselves alive in comparison to tanks, obviously, so I recommend sharing. Usually whenever this wash comes up, I'm looking at the health bars of my party members, and I'm taking a look at like who needs the most help if anybody's dropping really low, and basically helping the healer get a little breathing room by popping Corundum on them. Obviously it would work with any of the other ones. Dark Knight might be a little bit scary, but you can give them a little bit of breathing room with TBN. So definitely save your 25-second cooldown for your party members here. Don't use it on yourself. Keep yourself up if you're tanking this through normal Rampart cooldown usage. As you see, I have Rampart here, so like if things got spicy, I could just Rampart the autos. Going. You see it gets spicy, and you see my cursor like instantly dart up to Pro because you just really give him random. Help the healer get a little bit of breathing room. 8 puff. This mechanic is pretty much the exact same. I drag into the safe zone, keep up time, stand in the path of the Ewers, however you say it. Keep up time. Pretty much standard strats from normal mode apply here. You see I give a little bit of a breathing room to healer with Rampart camo combo. And I basically kind of like kitchen sink this. Pretty much this is the last big spicy part for the tank. Is that tank buster right there. So I recommend kitchen sinking it. Because you'll have pretty much no need for the rest of the fight for your big cooldowns. You're not going to be taking too many more autos. Silkie's pretty much passing for the rest of this fight after you deal with all that. So I recommend 2 minute here, soften up the blows beforehand with Rampart, and then cover with 25-second cooldown as necessary to fill in the gaps. So take him to the basic spot over here at the east side of the arena where everybody takes him, and basically myself and the Dragoon keep up time here. As long as you're along the path of the puffs in some way, shape, or form, and the person with the charge on them is at the absolute other end of the arena, it doesn't really matter where you're standing. As long as you're standing on the path, you'll get hit and you'll soften the blow for everybody. So melees, sit on the boss, and keep your up time. Save your glat closers, because this is a 2-minute window right here, at least it was for my group. Save your glat closers out of that, don't to at least get back to Sil'dih after he dashes through. Keep your uptime. See, I got closed straight through after he dashes through me. Keep uptime, and then I drag him to the very edge of the wall up here. I haven't seen too many people do this other than like Xenosys. I think Xenosys Vex is like one of the only people I've seen clears of whenever I was progging this content that drug him to the wall. Basically, the usual strat I know is to take him to where the 2 disappeared puffs are and sit him north, and it is completely clean and free of the cleaves from the 4 cardinal cleaves from the blue puffs. But there's also a really small sliver along the edge of the arena that we're standing in, 1 tile away from the blue puffs, that you can also stand in for uptime. And instead of dragging him, like in this scenario, I'd have had to drag him across the arena, costing myself and the Dragoon in our group a little bit of uptime. So it's easier to just go to where he dashes to and then take the little bit of the stutter step to the north, drag him over here, and then sit inside of his hitbox, and you'll be completely safe. So let's keep going, and you'll see what I'm saying. Yep. So you see 1 tile away, you see all of the safe spots. There is this little bit of a safe spot a little bit further, but it's really hard to find. I prefer just like taking this one at the edge. You always know what's going to be here, regardless of what the combination is. So just sit him at the edge on the western portion of the wall, slightly north, out of the range of the horizontal cleave from the ice puff, and you'll be fine. After that happens, I recommend having your tank drag him up north while maintaining your GCD rolling on the boss for the knockback. You should be coming in close to a kill on Sil'dih at this point. If you're running with something other than a shield healer, I would recommend, it's kind of like a dice roll if you want to pop your arm's length knockback communities here to keep your uptime rolling, or if you want to roll a dice on one of the dashes, because after the 4 puff mechanic right here, you're going to see dashes from Sil'dih again, just like you had post up him strat. So you're rolling the dice on if you're going to get blue or yellow for his tail instead of the knockback tail, the green tail. I recommend just saving one of your gap closers in case you do take the knockback here. Just gap close back to him, and then you're still safe, and you still have your arm's length for the next few dashes if you see him. Based on depends on where your mechanic or damage is. Like you see, we're at 17%, and we're about to get LB2. So I think we almost see one of the dashes here with our DPS. We're gonna do the Mr. Happy strat here. I'll credit Mr. Happy with this one, obviously, and I'll link the video on the stream if you want to see that and an actual explanation of this. I recommend doing his strat though for uptime. It helps to make the enrage check, and it helps to mitigate any potential damage downs. If you see any, you can take a couple of damage downs. Whenever we had a couple of damage downs with our group's DPS, we're full. A couple of us are full BI best in slot, and a couple of us are like nearing in on it. I think we're missing like a weapon or two, and we still took damage down, and we were still able to meet the DPS check. You just gotta be really careful, and I highly recommend seeing some of the uptime strats for these fights. So, do the uptime Mr. Happy strat, come back in. At this point, I recommend popping your Pink's raid-wide CD for the total wash that's gonna be coming up after this mechanic. It should be the last time you see it, and if you pop it right now while you're standing in the safe zone up north, it will be back for Dullahans post-Sil'dih, which is the next time that you're going to actually want it and need it, depending on what your group decides to do. But I recommend just popping it now. It'll be back. You're not going to need it for the armor post-Sil'dih. So it'll line up really nice if you just pop it right now while you're waiting for the mechanic to resolve. You see total wash. The raid wide from the tank will be rolling. If they pop it right there, like I mentioned, it'll cover this total wash. This is also the point where I recommend LB2. While you're standing here waiting for him to do this, depends on your group and your kill time in the ad, but this was usually never a burst window for us, so the Dragoon was free to use the LB2 right here without costing himself any burst window damage. It's really up to you where you want to use it on each of these bosses. I do recommend not using it on any of the trash. I know you're going to be tempted to because it's Gonna save a lot of time and damage on the trash, but I recommend just using it on the bosses to meet and rage. So this is where I recommend using it for our, if you're similar to our group, or just in general, that would be where I would use it. So you see we're nearing the end of the fight. He does do dashes here, depending on how your DPS looks. So we see like the actual dash, but I don't think we actually see the 4 cardinal cleave from him. We do see it. Okay. So at that point, you're just basically trying to beat the DPS. He's going to do 2 dashes, and then he's going to cast his Enrage and kill the group if you see that point. So usually, if you're close to BIS, which I highly recommend you being before you attempt the Savage version, just to make your life a lot easier, you'll kill him post that total wash before you see dashes. If your DPS is a little bit lacking, then you'll probably see some of the dashes, 1 or 2. So your mana limit may vary. Just handle them the same way that you did the earlier ones, and you should be fine though. I don't really recommend blowing any of your CDs at that point. So you see the next set of Savage adds. I highly recommend pulling the armor first, as you're about to see us do. And I recommend waiting until they're on the corner of this little bookcase to the left that he's approaching. Turn something off. The reason for that is his timeline, his sequence won't start until you actually pull him. So if you pull him when he's up there on that little display case, he will follow your tank a pretty good amount down the hallway before he starts casting Hell's Nebula and chopping everybody to 1% or 1 HP. And you really want that to happen, because the farther your tank can get him down the hall, the more time that you're going to have to DPS race the armor before the Dullahan walks around the corner and starts getting close to your group. This fight right here is a DPS race. I recommend, if you have your burst unitos, to use it right here on the armor. See, I drag him down the hall, and then he has Hell's Nebula, so that's about as far as I can get him. That's about as much time as I bias to DPS race him down. You see me start using my 2-minute burst window. So yep, Hell's Nebula, it will drop your entire party to 1 hit point. After he does that, he's going to basically stand there and do nothing. I don't think that he even really auto-attacks the tank much at this point, if at all. Actually, actually he does not auto-attack the tank while he sits there and waits between this and his next mechanic, the Raid Wide Heavy. So you have a lot of time for your healer to snap heal and get yourselves back to a survivable level and stabilize yourselves while you burn down the boss, or boss ad. So you see, he just hit Hell's Nebula and we have him at 57%, so see we're kind of racing here. Kind of a little fun little set though, I really enjoy it. It's kind of like skin in your teeth. You need to kill him before next Dullahan walks around the corner, or otherwise it's a white. Yeah. You see he did the heavy and the armor and the untelegraphed slash there. On our initial prog, I was using Reprisal here, and then my healer asked me to stop using it. It kind of makes a little bit of sense when you see what we're about to do. I recommend doing the same thing. I recommend not using Reprisal, but it's ultimately a discussion between you and your healer if you really want to mitigate the hit on this. Just be careful if you don't. I think that when we were testing it out and like getting our prog and getting this consistently, we were looking at roughly, I want to say 40k damage from that hit. So your DPS should be pretty much close to topped off if you want to like comfortably survive this. Otherwise, you're going to be kind of playing with fire on if the hit will wipe out your party. You see that? See that he's basically dead at this point. So we won the DPS race because the Dullahan isn't here. We're gonna peek around and you see him coming around the corner. DPS, I know you kind of want to get your uptime here, but let your tank peek around here. This guy will aggro on sight whenever he sees you. It's really running the risk of your DPS getting one shot by the Dullahan whenever you run around the corner with the tank like that. So be a little bit careful, be a little bit cautious. Let the tank poke out first and at least provoke and get some kind of aggro established before you poke out with him. So, see, provoke pull, I drag him back down here on the corner. At this point, the other 2 ads will not poke their heads around the corner, so you're free to push this guy at your leisure, but this is also a DPS race, even though there's no ad that's going to come around the corner and double aggro. And the reason for that is the bleed that this guy does on his raid wides. If you see that second bleed, he's gonna put 2 bleeds on you basically at that point, and it's pretty much a wipe. There's not a whole lot that your healer can do to cover it at that point. So you're pretty much done at that point. So you need to, again, DPS race the Dullahan, get him down before he gets that second bleed out on you. So you notice that I said earlier I did not reprisal the heavy from the armor. You see that I throw it out here. I recommend doing the same thing, and it got pretty good reviews from Tusani and my group whenever we did it. Tossing your raid wide damage mitigation from your tank out in addition to the reprisal. So Paladin, I would recommend Wings and the reprisal, Dark Knight, Dark Missionary reprisal, Warrior, Shake It, and reprisal. And it really cuts down on the damage from the bleed. This bleed is like all the other bleeds in the game. It applies all of the damage calculations on the initial hit of Infernal Pain. So as much mitigation and debuffs as you have on the boss at the time that the cast finishes casting, it's going to soften every single dot tick for the subsequent dot by amount proportional to that. So get everything out before he casts this dot, and blow both your tanks party-wide mitigations on it. Definitely helps and makes the dot a lot more manageable, which is going to help your healer keep you topped up, and it's also going to help your healer do a little bit more damage since they're not going to have to babysit the DPS for the entire time. Do not use your tune at 25 second here. I recommend using it for the upcoming King's Will cast. So save that. I know it's going to be like tempting to help the DPS out, but I recommend not using your tank's 25 second shareable cooldowns on the dot itself. I recommend using those on the heavy from the armors instead, if you're going to share them. If you use it on the heavy from the armors, and then every single pull that we did on Prague, it was backup for the King's Will cast and available for your tank to use. So I'm going to do the Infernal Pain. Next move, Blighted Gloom, is untelegraphed. He does have the cast bar, but there's no telegraph. If you don't remember from the normal version, it's basically the range of a soil, so luckily we were progging with the Scholar. Comes up a little bit short of the soil, so like you see Pokemon trainers like standing right here in the edge of the soil. He's going to be safe. So if you want to like eyeball it, if you want to play safe and like run farther down the hallway, that's fine too. I recommend saving your Gladiator for this portion right here, if you have one, and using it to re-engage after the cast bar is completed. Once the cast bar is completed, the snapshot for the positioning and the telegraph will go out, and if you're outside of it, you're safe, so you're free to gap close regardless of what the animation says. So just save your gap closer for here, use it to close back into him, and keep your uptime that way. So yep, see I come back here, this is where my potions comes back. I recommend using the potion on the upcoming No Mercy window that I have or upcoming 1 minute burst I have in 11 seconds. Again, you're DPS racing this guy. You need to get him out before he tosses another bleed on your party, or else it's pretty much over. So the next thing that he's going to do is King's Will, and this is basically a souped up version of every single auto attack. You see it on normal too, and it is a lot nastier here. For our group, I used Rampart, I used Camouflage, and I covered myself with my 25 second after the cast bar is over. I use Hard Corundum, and I pocket Nebula in case I need it. I also have Super Bolide, and this is kind of it depends on how the pull goes, but you want to use one of your immunity, or you want to use your tank immunity on either this Dullahan or the second Dullahan whenever you pull him. It's going to open up a lot of breathing room for your healer if he doesn't have to worry about the autos, because you see that the dot still has 18 seconds to tick on us. So I recommend either Bolide immuning all of the autos from this King's Will, or saving it for the second Dullahan and using it there. Definitely makes your life a lot easier on your healer, and helps them to manage the rest of the party member, because they don't have to sit there and babysit the tank through these massive autos. So, kitchen sink one of the Dullahans. In our testing, I was able to get away without fully kitchen sinking, and just kept pocketing it in case things got a little wiry and scary for me. I really didn't end up needing it. But if you're scared, I would recommend going to church. I would recommend just popping everything that your tank has. You're not really need much of the cooldowns for much of anything else until you get back to the second Dullahan. You kitchen sink this, and like I said, you should be tank immuning the Dullahan that you're not kitchen sinking. You see, I get Everlasting Flight here as well from the Phoenix, from my summoner, and there's an Addle. There's gonna be Addles on both of the King's Wills from the Dullahans. So if you have a melee in your party, that's where I'd recommend using your Addo, because it softens melee hits and physical hits harder than magic. So use Addles on the King's Will cast, and use feints. Sorry, I haven't been calling it Addle the entire time. Use feints on the physical King's Will cast. Use your Addles on the bleed, and it'll make your healer's lives a lot easier. So you see, we're still DPS racing a potion here. We still got 36%, and we got 9 seconds left on the bleed. And we keep racing, trying to burn him down. You see, he gets ready to cast Infernal Pain. So, at this point, you're able to take a breather. This armor handled the same way as the first armor that you've found, and basically your tank should be free to like not use another cooldowns or anything. I wouldn't recommend any big CDs for this. Just let your healer deal with snap healing after he brings you to 1 health, gets you over that 40k-ish threshold for the weighted, the heavy cast, and then basically you're free to kind of relax and not use any of your burst and 2-minute windows on this. There's no DPS rice on this guy. If you see a second heavy cast, then it's not a big deal. It's just something that your healer's going to have to kind of heal through and bring yourselves up. You see us keep going. Get out of the way of where he's looking. That cast is untelegraphed, but the easiest way to look is just watch where he faces and then get yourself out of that direction. Then we're casually just making our way through it. Again, this is where your tank can use their 25-second cooldown if he wants to. See, we see a second wait, but we're pretty healed, so it does hurt, but it's not a huge problem. And then that's pretty much that. That covers that. And now you get a couple of seconds. You see us wait to pull the Dullahan until everybody's regened. And we set ourselves up a 2-minute burst, and then this is the same way that you handle the first Dullahan. It's a DPS race to kill him before he kills you and gets that second bleed out. It's gonna be really hard for your healer to deal with it. You're gonna see me use my Super Bow Light on this pull. I didn't really need to use it. We were pretty comfy on the first Dullahan. Some of the Blighted Glooms, you can use the soil to kind of judge where the telegraph is on that and get out. King's Will, see I Bull-Eyed, I just don't know how to deal with it. And it's very comfy for the healer at this point since he's able to just sit here and bomb and keep everybody up. That's going to take a little bit longer. Don't pull Sil'dihn Gladiator while you have the dot rolling on you. Give it a second. Let it fall off, let your healer regen you a little bit. You do have enough breathing time. I know you have the 24-minute timer, but if your DPS is pumping, you should have pretty comfy margin to just sit here and let yourself naturally regen and deal with the bleed and dot. Make your lives a lot easier. So Sil'dihn Gladiator, nothing really changes. I recommend handling pretty much everything the same way. Recommend pulling him south whenever you have your tank engage. The first dashes are always coming from the north, so this basically just gives your melee a lot more uptime while you adjust for the first set of dashes, so as you're about to see here. So he's already in position. It's just a quick, easy movement. You keep your GCD rolling while you walk to the safe zone. The dashes come out, and you're able to keep maximum uptime while you dodge the mechanic, find your pie slices, and then do the same thing. Have your tank drag him north. The second dashes are always going to come from the south. You basically give yourself the same amount of uptime if you drag him this way. Not too hard to do. If your tank is kind of scared and not able to do it, he should go to mobs in the other world and leash them. Sculpture's Passion. You see we use soil on this one. It is pretty hefty party-wide. Always have the tank in front of it. It does the most damage to the first person it hits. With your healer's mitigation on the party, like you see soil here, and a 25-second CD, it is pretty livable for the tank. So I recommend just blowing that here. If you use your 2-minute cooldown It will not reach the tank buster that's following up this, so don't use your 2 minute here. I know it's tempting. There's a lot of damage going out. You're going to use another cooldown here, just use Rampart. See that? I cover it with Heart of Corundum. Pretty comfy. I don't really take too much damage between the soil on that. This is 2 minute window for all of us. You see us coordinating. Here comes the tank buster. Like I said, this is where I recommend you're using your 2 minute window mitigation for your tank. Even with your 2 minute, it does get a little bit spicy, but not too bad. So, coming up is the debuff, we call them defamations on my group because they're reminiscent of defamations from earlier raid tiers. I recommend, if you can, if you have a scholar in your party, I recommend cheesing the stack. It saves a lot of time and effort and a lot of healing from your healer overall, and your scholar overall. If you don't have a scholar, unfortunately, I think you're stuck with having to actually stack with each other. But if you do have a scholar, you can use your tank's 25-second cooldown on the person affected with the stack debuff, and some big shields and mitigations from the scholar, as you're about to see, and basically you're able to keep spread without having to deal with any subsequent like stack mechanics or anything like that. It makes it a lot simpler, it dumbs it down a lot. The only thing that you have to worry about at this point is the Lingering Echoes debuff, which will drop the blue puddle underneath whoever has that, and that's just a quick sidestep and adjust if you know that's coming. So it's very easy, very simple if you have a scholar in your party to do it this way, but unfortunately if you don't have a scholar, then you're kind of stuck doing it the normal way. So see that happen. Keep your uptime while you adjust and look at what he's going to be doing. Unfortunately, we get the 3, so you see me leave, and you're about to see the big shield, all the cooldowns that are floating on Pokemon Trainer right now for the stack, and that's more than sufficient to deal with it. I think it does 75k if I have to remember to them, so more than enough shielding applied to him. And then obviously your tank cooldown as well to help him. I give him Corundum, and see it barely budgets his hit, basically takes about 25% off of his hit point total, and very comfy. Everybody just has to stay spread from each other, deal with the blue puddle, and keeps up time. 10 out of 10 would bring Scholar to doing this again, but all the other healers are viable. It's just going to mean that you're going to have to do this mechanic yourself. See, the Flash is still coming. This is handle this the same way as Total Wash for your tank. Have a raid wide cooldown, either Reprisal or your actual raid wide on every single cast, and have your healer shield and heal through it as applicable. Flashes of Seal aren't too bad as long as you're mostly topped and shielded. They don't really change too much from the normal version. So sit here, keep your uptime. About to get Hateful Visage 1. For this one, there's always going to be the quadrant without orbs, so you see right here, it's these two that I'm stepping into. Either your tank or your melee should always be in this quadrant. It depends on your group and how you want to heal it, handle it, but always keep your uptime, stick one of them in this quadrant. Don't put your range and your healers here. It results in your tank and your melee getting downtime here, which you're going to need a little bit to mitigate any kind of damage downs. Give yourself a little bit of breathing room if you don't play perfectly during this fight. Beat the enrage. Phoenix Slash Steel, you see I put Reprisal out, again keeping to the 1 mitigation. Fortunately, the next one, if you do it this way though, you're going to need to Tactician or Addle or Faint some way, shape, or form. Your tank is not going to have the cooldown back. Unless you're a Paladin, you can probably help out with Veil. You can stagger and do like Wings on one, do Reprisal on another, and then Divine Veil to help out a little bit. But that's like a Paladin specific thing, I would imagine. If you're using any of the other 2 tanks, your cooldowns are going to line up such that this next Flash of Steel after the debuff Hateful Visage falls off, they're going to be both on cooldowns if you use them over the 2 Flashes of Steel that you just did. Uptime, Hateful Visage 2 or Cursed Visage. See that come out. Same thing, you can't really like force uptime here, you have to handle your debuff. I get lucky and it's double gold for me, so I'm able to sit and keep my melee uptime here, but there are attempts where both myself and the Dragoon have to go out in range and take our debuffs out there. So you see I have nothing here for this Flash of Steel, so I'm kind of relying on the Faint from the Dragoon and big cooldowns from the healer to kind of get us through that. The rest of the Flashes of Steel, though, you will have the raid wides to cover those, so it's just this one that you only have to deal with that. Give yourselves a favor when it comes to towers and change. The next mechanic, back up straight under the boss, just so that you have less distance to travel before you break your chain, so you don't run the risk of the chain not breaking if you don't go far enough, and giving your damage down. This also means that your melee and tank, who should be moving together with the boss, are going to have to travel less and keep their GCD rolling while the boss follows the tank. So it does help a lot. Stack up middle, stack up straight under him, and shorten the distance that you have to go. Alright, so handling the towers, you're going to have either the safe spots are either going to be northeast or northwest, or southeast and southwest, diagonal from each other. So like this one you see is going to be to the northeast, so the range and the healer are going to have a safe spot in the southeast, and that is, or southwest, and that's going to dictate how we handle our towers in our group. Dumbs down a lot of thought process. You know, whichever person has the first towers in your direction, like you see it's me. I know that whenever I come back in, bring him back to the middle, I'm going to be either handling the north tower or the east tower, whichever way in that spawns, and then the other person that travels with me will just handle the tower that I'm not getting. You see, drag him up here. You see my chain falls off right there, so I don't have to drag him very far. Come back to him, keep uptime. You see I'm positioned myself to the north and the west, or the east. It's the east tower. I'm right here. That means that Prel, who's with me and has second tower, he'll get the north tower. Once you travel with me to the northwest, or the northeast safe spot, and handle the other handle the other tower the same way for the range and the healer. Opposite your tank and melee. Move out to the wall, save your gap closer right here, use it to keep your uptime. Come back in. This is getting a little spicy, there's a lot of damage going out, so definitely use your tank's raid wide mitigation for this Flash of Steel. And then with good DPS, you're going to start looking at LB2ing right here, and you're going to be close to getting the clear of the Gladiator at this point. The only other mechanic in the fight that you're probably going to see based on your DPS is dashes. It's basically handled the exact same way. Drag him south, keep yourself in melee uptime, whatever the dashes happen to be, and then DPS race at this point to beat and rage. So you see handling it the exact same way as the first dashes. The 1 in 3 combo, so we're going to stand over here. He's already in melee range, the position. He doesn't like drag behind the tank. Very clean, keeps uptime very nicely. Just requires your tank to know how to leash and move with their GCDs. So you see me leash him to the north on this variation. He's already set. He's at 5% here. A lot of gloops that I've seen do this start looking at killing around here. Again, they're probably a little bit better geared than us, but it does work out because I can show you guys the last few mechanics in this fight that you're probably going to see on Savage if your damage is also like ours and not like maxed out full best in slot. See another wild charge. We call it the wild charge. Just have your tank deal with it the same way, stand in front of everybody else. 25-second cooldown through it. Resolve the exact same way, and there's no follow-up tank buster, so even if you wanted to, you could use 2-minute there. But it's going to align really weird unless you want to use Rampart on Shadowcaster. Moving along, you now have Shadowcaster. You have a second, depending on how your DPS is going, how your timer is going, to reorient yourselves and put out your markers here. Shadowcaster, again, doesn't change much. He just has a bigger health pool and a slight damage increase to some of his attacks, but you're not going to really notice too much of it. Especially not on your tank autos or anything like that. Most of it you're really going to notice on show of power. At this point, all of your tanks, raid-wide mitigations, and reprisals should line up with every single show of power on this fight. So I recommend doing what you see me do throughout the entire video for this fight, and lining up your tank's raid-wide mitigation reprisal for each and every single one of the show of powers. Just cut it down to the last boss. There's nothing after this. There's nothing you need to line it for. There's no other spots in this that I would recommend using it for. This is the biggest source of raid-wide damage to your entire party, so just double mitt here. Weave both of them on the show powers and make it a lot easier for your group. Some basic uptime here. Recommend having your tank know where the safe spot for every variation of this is. I'm not going to cover that again because this video also already seems that you're familiar with this mechanic in the mirrors. This mostly just looks like a savage. I recommend having your melee stand at wherever the close safe spot for the mechanic is and having your tank take their range position. What this is going to do is it's going to drag the boss with you as you move to take that range position. So your melee should always be on a 45-degree angle from wherever your safe spot is. If you handle it the same way that my group did, you will 100% guarantee have uptime. You do this. So let's watch and see how I handle it. It's double red, so my safe spot is over here, the way that we handled it. You see Prel is 45 degrees in for me, a little bit. Keeping his uptime. Fortunately, I did not move fast enough to drag him, but if you know exactly where you're going, as soon as you see the mechanic come out, you can drag him with your tank, and he would have been standing with me over the safe zone, so the melee would actually have rear positionals on that scenario. Tank Buster, handled the same way. This is the point where I'd recommend using your 2-minute with some additional help from, like you see, Soil from your healer. You can also feint this. This is probably a good point to feint. I recommend using your 2-minute CD and additionally tossing on your 25-minute just to give yourself a little action breathing room. It's going to be pretty immobile, so move your boss as much as you can before the fracture comes out, and then after that he'll be able to be dragged again. I recommend dragging him to the middle of the arena, like you see us do here. It helps you to keep uptime while you sort yourselves out for lasers. The next mechanic is lasers. Handle this pretty much the exact same way. Nothing changes on this mechanic from normal. As you see me dragging him into the middle, he's full uptime for both ourselves and the group that's diagonal across from us. So the Dragoon is over there, he's maintaining complete uptime. And then he's going to hop here, you can't really drag him anymore, but it's not going to be too much of a positional shift. Your tank can keep, your melee can keep uptime if they position themselves along this line, the tile that you see myself standing in. The lasers will blast past you, you won't be in any danger, and then adjust to whichever pie slice is coming out first, and stand in the second pie slice. And it's a little tight, but as you can see me doing here, you will maintain full uptime, keep your DC re-rolling, help yourself beat the rage on this boss. Yep. So you see me moving to that second pie slice, and then keep your DCD rolling. And then another Fire Steel Fracture. You use your 2-minute on the first one. Recommend Rampart and the 25-second cooldown from your tank on this one. It'll cover this one as well. Feint it as well if you want to. Hopefully it'll actually bleed in the room, but in all our scenarios, usually Rampart and Arctic Corundum was enough for me. It should be mostly the same on the other tanks. Standing along that line, keeping my uptime. Here comes the next show of strength. You see me again put Heart of Light and Reprisal out. Use both your raid-wide mitigations from your tank on this. There's no reason not to. Uptime. However you want to handle Infern Brand 3, which is the next mechanic, is up to you. There's not really a solid uptime strat for any of that. You see us do JP Branded in this one. I'll link the video to that in the description and give them credit for that one, but it's really up to you. There are numerous strategies on how to properly resolve this. There's probably some that even give you better uptime, but JP Branded is very simple and easy to grasp once you attempt to do it a couple times, so that's just what we went through. But every strat is viable on Savage. See us do JP Branded, the clues start going off. See us standing on the markers, keeping uptime. After this, it's gonna be another Fire Steel Fracture. Your 2-minute or 2-minute cooldown. Let's see me use Nebula here. It's gonna be back off cooldown for this one, so that's why I recommend using it there. But if you alternate Rampart and Nebulas in places where I tell you to, in the opposite places where I tell you to use them, it should line up the same way, so it's up to you. Just the way that I recommend handling it. At this point, it's pretty much just the DPS race. Not a whole lot has changed on this from normal mode. Let's see Infernbrand 4. There's no like one way to handle it. Pretty much all the save spots are like set in stone for every single way that or every single set and random permutation that you can see on this. It's just where you want to put your specific player for your Stein spot. As you can see, not really a way to keep up time for the melee and tank. And so don't really worry too much about maintaining your uptime. Just focus on staying in the proper square where you don't jump on, have him jump on everybody. So show of power is the next thing. Handle it the same way. You see me put hard light out and I reprisal them. There's one more show of strength after this, and your tank's raid-wide damage mitigation, and your reprisal will be both back up for it. So you see it nicely covers every single show of power that he does. Pretty easy breezy DPS race at this point. Infernbrand 5. If your DPS is really good, there is a way to handle this where you stand in the corners. So you see the looking at the south here, so this would be the southeast and southwest corners respectively. If you put your tank and your melee in here and drag him to where you have uptime and you're constantly beating able to hit him, and put your healer and your caster down here, your poles will cleave and hit the two closest players, but you'll never get a point where you're double cleaving each other. So it'll basically trivialize this entire mechanic, but the only way you can do this is if you are 100% certain that you will beat him before the mechanic resolves, because if you do not, then every single one of these lasers blows up and you wipe and you have to start over from the start again. So be careful, only do this if you know that your DPS is pumping and you have the capability to beat him before you actually need to handle this mechanic. When we tried it, we didn't think that we did, so you see us actually do the mechanic here. But it is another option if you're pumping, and if you are pumping, I recommend that option. It trivializes it, makes it completely brain dead. It's just a DPS race at that point. If you do it the normal way, the way that we handled it, if you want to simplify things for yourselves, is the people that are going to take the cleaves from the rods, the lower number person would stand to the left and the higher number person would stand to the right. So like right here, you have Pokemon Trainer and Prel standing right here. Prel is number 3, so he's going to be standing, if you're looking at the pole from the center, to the left of it. And Prel Bear is going to be to the right of it. He's number 4. So whenever you see me moving to the next one, you see that I have the 1 marker, so I'm going to be standing to the left of this pole if you're looking at it from the center. So they break us through, break us out. You see I stand to the left, you saw me stand to the right. I'm 1, he's 2. It's an easy way to like trivialize it and dumb it down, so that you're not like overlapping your cleaves on top of each other and everybody knows that they're standing. Yep, deal with Infernbrand 5 whichever way you want. DPS race at this point. Burn. I don't recommend LB2ing unless you're doing the DPS race, ignore the mechanic strat that I had mentioned before. There's no good time in this. You're going to lock yourself into place for the animation, and you're going to basically force yourself to a wipe at that point. So save it after you do Infernbrand 4 or Infernbrand 5 if you don't do the ignore the mechanic strat. As you see Prel, he's about to use it here. Cleaves off about 3% of the boss's hit points. At this point, you're just basically at a DPS race to beat him. I forget to... Actually, I do forget to Heart of Light and Reprisal the show power on that one, just because I'm like excited for the clear, but you see I did have both of them. So just use them at that point. Do be like me. Don't be an idiot. Actually do them on your clear. Yeah, that's the Savage version of the Criterion. Another thing I want to do, I want to put my thoughts out on the dungeon itself at some point, but for now this is a pretty good primer if you just want to like approach the Savage version and you're kind of like wondering what's different, and a practical way to kind of plan out for the upcoming things that you may not have seen yet whenever you're progging it, just so you kind of have a heads up on what's coming and decent ways to handle it when you get there. You can obviously use any of these strats on the normal version too. They all apply there, and you're going to destroy the normal version. You're going to be so far ahead of the DPS checks, it's not even funny if you do all these uptime strats and handle things the same way, but it's really up to you how you want to do that. Yeah, thanks for watching. I'm going to try and do some more kind of things like this, and maybe some more tank-focused things like this in the future, so if you want to see that, by all means, feel free to follow the Twitch and the YouTube channels, and feel free to ask questions. Pop in every once in a while. I do answer questions if anybody brings them to me while I'm streaming, if they see me handling things in certain ways and doing things like that. I do kind of like try and keep an engagement with my audience whenever that happens. Yeah, that's gonna be do it for me for this one. I appreciate you watching. Thanks for your time, and hopefully this helps you get your clear, and if not Savage, at least the normal version. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a good rest of your day, and peace out.